Hello, Mary. I see you. I'm just going to put on the intro real quick so I can share out, and then I'll pull you up on the screen. How's it going, everybody? This time I think we got it right. We got Mary Rodwell in the house. This ought to be very interesting. She's a plethora of knowledge and experiences. I'm grateful to be ending the day, 4 shows today, with sitting down and having a conversation with her. So I'm going to pull her up now. Yes. Hello, Mary.
Hello. Nice to see you again.
It's good to see you. It really is. Yeah, I mean, it's. I remember hearing about you 2 or 3 years ago, and wow, I sure like to get her on the show. But we had such a good time last time. I did. I
Yeah,
really did.
yeah,
You've got such a unique perspective, and obviously, you've been doing this for quite a while. You know, it's such uh, God. I mean, what do you say about 2020? I mean, I everywhere I look, there's transformation happening with people. I see people that have been out there for a long time. They've been high vibrational, almost like, oh my God, I'll never be like them, and they're being humbled. Everybody's being humbled, and it's like the body, and it's the body seems to be having real evidence of transformation, and you see people making bold, courageous moves, and speaking up. And I went to a we had a gathering 2 weeks ago in the St. Pete, Florida area with another group. And, typical Soulogy style, we just kind of set a rough agenda. And so I had, some things planned for the 3 or 4 hours we were there as I was emceeing it. And one lady got up and just said, I've never spoken before in front of anybody. I've never told my story. And she just blew the house away. And then another one stepped up, and then another one stepped up. And it was incredible to see not only the feminine energy stepping into their power. And to me, the universe was like saying, hey, Todd, here's a snapshot of what's going on. But there was also almost 50% men there, which is very, unusual. And you've been going to these things for years. But it was the energy these men were carrying. It was not the old machismo. It was this soft, powerful community, collaborative type of frequency. And I was like, wow. And I'm still wild over it. What have you been seeing in 2020 or as we've come into it?
I think your assessment overall is exactly the same kinds of things that I'm seeing now. And it seems to have been exponential since 2012, in the sense that people have made 180-degree shifts in their focus, their lifestyle, what they want to achieve. There's this complete disregard for materialistic lifestyle into something more holistic, more spiritual, more about feeling the connection to everyone else on this wonderfully consciousness level. And everything seems to have stemmed from this exponential shift. I mean, literally every single day I'm getting emails, and as you say, it's not just, you know, the women here, you know, the female energy. It is many of the those coming through from, you know, corporate, particularly the men going and saying, a few years ago, none of this would have meant anything. I wouldn't have understood it. In fact, I'd have been totally skeptical of this. I couldn't have been more 3D. And they are wanting to explore their own spirituality, the consciousness side of it, in a wonderfully open way. And I think that, as you say, I do believe this shift is becoming literally exponential. The numbers of people that are wanting to share their story now, and you know, part of my work is, you know, I get to connect with the professionals within, you know, our society that have got a great deal to lose by owning their awareness. And, you know, I'm talking about medical doctors, nurses, midwives, lawyers, celebrities, you know, right across the board. And to come out and actually share this is incredibly courageous. But it's almost like they're saying, I can't not do this now. This is something inside me saying I've got to speak my truth.
Yeah, it's that nudging of the soul once it starts, as we all know. Now, so what type of work brings you into the path to collaborate and interact with these types of people?
Well, I think primarily many see my presentations and resonate to the information. And as you well know, Todd, I don't pussyfoot around, you know. I'm
No.
saying, this is what I'm finding. You can take it or leave it. It really doesn't matter to me. But, you know, this is where this is leading me down this rabbit hole. And what I found is that people do like the balance of me bringing in as much science as possible to qualify the reality as I can. And of course, I work with in the organization of Free, and now in the new organization, Consciousness and Contact Research Institute. Many of them are PhDs in various fields. But what I'm getting is through what I'm putting out, and people knowing you know, that I'm trying to balance out what we understand from 3D into our multidimensional selves, is that I'm connecting with medical doctors. And in my book, The New Human, there's one medical doctor that's come out the closet, space closet, and she's literally had this shift of awareness in an Indian temple after losing her son. And after that has now openly said that she's no longer a 3D MD, but a shamanic MD, because she now is activating DNA and courageously coming out with saying, this is my reality now. This is why people are coming to me. And it's because of this awareness that I now have of what's going on. So she's just one. In fact, I've got a group of MDs now that I've connected to each other, because many of them are worried about that, you know, not being able to share. And it's very isolating when you're in a particular field where most of your peers are still in the 3D paradigm, and yet they're experiencing everything, the whole gamut of multidimensionality, from wanting to work with crystals, are aware of working like a kind of psychic surgery, aware of their connection to many different beings, and they're saying, you know, here's my credentials, but this is what I'm experiencing. How do you
Wow.
manage that? Because it's a lot easier for the average,
Yeah.
the housewife or the farmer, maybe, because they've not got to have any standing necessarily with others in quite the same way as professionals do. What do you do? So I thought that I would connect some of the MDs together. So I've got a group of medical doctors now that can talk to one another
Yeah.
if they need to, but I'm going to do that for nurses and midwives. I want to do that for social workers. I want to do that for those that work in the, like psychiatrists, clinical psychologists that I've met that have had experiences. And, on one hand, they're taught to say to somebody, oh, if you're hearing voices, then I know which psychiatrist you need to see, to actually experiencing this themselves and realizing that in many cases it's not a psychosis, it's actually people opening up to their
Yeah.
multidimensional connection.
God, that's mind blowing. And I can see how professionals, I mean, because we've watched over the years, people, some people having two pages in social media, one with a pseudonym, that they are themselves, and the other one were for their family and friends, and you see people break out of that. I've seen a lot of people do that, which is amazing, but I can imagine being implanted, for many years. I mean, if you're a doctor, I mean, you go to school for 7 or 8 years to be, and then intern, and then
Yeah,
so, and then of course have the potential threat or the perceived threat of being, set aside and treated like so many of us with our own families. So that you're talking about a huge that's a huge leap. So this is great news because it's the 100th monkey thing. I mean, as one starts it, another starts it, and
yeah,
how the impact that would have just in medical science alone, even like psychiatry. Oh, that's not multiple personality, that's my higher self coming in. you know
yeah.
I mean, just having a patient come in, okay, I'm actually not crazy, because how many of us thought we were crazy? But now, is there a specific place that you're bringing these people together? Are you bringing them together in like just private chat groups, or do you have a place where it's all housed?
These are private groups for
Mm.
this, whether or not down the track they choose to become more public. For me, it's all been about support.
Yeah.
Who can, when they'll say to me, I feel so isolated, I feel so alone with this, and I can't talk about it to my colleagues, but it's profound for me. And this is was very clear to me when I was working with Dr. Lena Olson, who's a molecular biologist in Sweden. And she was very wary about coming out, because in Scandinavia generally, a lot of this is really dangerous to come out with,
Yeah.
in terms of professionals and whatever. And she was actually asking the beings. One of them was the mantid being. She was getting this thing: you've got to come out, you've got to speak your truth. And she said, well, if I do, show me some sign. And she had this instant healing of something she'd had, a problem she'd
Mm.
had for years, literally an instant healing. And it's, yes, now is the time. And that's what she's done. She's now come out and, she's spoken about the fact that she's one of these generations of new human, that
Mm.
she experienced, the ADHD, the Asperger's side, the autistic side. And she's also done the testing to show that this is a very tangible thing. By all her senses have been, she's hypersensitive to
Mm.
touch, sight, to hearing, and she's tested all of these senses to say this is not, airy fairy stuff. There's a
Yeah.
real tangible thing here. And the changes that I've experienced, and what you can do about being one of these new upgraded humans, because you're going to need certain minerals, certain vitamins, because you are working at a higher frequency, a higher vibration. This is what you need, because I've shown what I can do to stabilize myself, which she calls the letter people, the ADHDs and whatever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I've tried very hard with all of this, Todd, to show there is a very real, tangible side to this. This isn't wishful thinking. It isn't we're all wanting to just, it's a great idea. This is about saying this is tangible, this is real, it's happening across the planet, and there are people all over the planet. I've met physicists who are experiencing this. that have actually said, it's challenged everything I've ever understood about physics, to a whole. And many that are having the experience are having downloads of information from physics right through to the origin of the species, to biology, to a real truth is coming through them as well. And they say, well, what do I do with the downloads? Who can I talk to about this? So there's almost like so many are seeing the elephant. I call it the ET elephant. But how do you say this and still feel like you can be respected and not judged for the fact that you're becoming more and more multidimensional?
Well, if you get an instantaneous healing as an affirmative, I don't think we have any choice. But I think that, well, this is really fantastic and encouraging news, because it is one thing for the 99.9. Let's just say that, and that's not a fair thing to say, but I mean, the normal people, the less known people, even someone like myself, who's doing this, year in year out. But for somebody that has the credibility from the standards of normalcy, to come out and say, I got a message from the Mantis team. Oh, who's the Mantis team? Well, that's an aspect of me from the future, or whatever she might say. I mean, that's profound. And then, of course, that's almost trivial compared to what the ramifications will be in things such as psychiatry and the medical field, and with physics and all these other things. I mean, I can imagine these people, for instance, of physics or even doctors, contemplating a project or a patient, saying, let's tap into our multidimensional team. I mean, that's powerful. That's just mind blowing. I'm so happy to hear that. And given all that you're exposed to and experiencing, then you have the backdrop. You're in Australia, and of course the fires. I know there. I think there's still some going, but I mean there was a real. I mean, I saw a map, I guess at the height of it, and it was just like it was everywhere. Then you got the coronavirus, and of course we can go down the list. How do you see? Where do you think that stuff's coming from? Is it Mother Earth uh, mirroring what we're doing, or maybe we're mirroring what she's doing? I don't know, but I mean, is it a natural kind of thing of purging, and or are there other, let's say, less than I don't want to say nefarious forces, but let's say less than you know friendly people trying to maintain the status quo, so to speak, that are you know promoting some of this. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it may be all of that.
Yeah.
But my sense is that we are going through a period of transition.
Yeah.
And with that transition, a lot of the darkness is being exposed. We're finding that out, the corruption, stemming from, the ones that are in power, in real power, not the puppets. We're talking about the ones that are
Right.
really behind the
Yes.
puppet. And I think everything's been thrown at us to knock us sideways, to get us to buy into the fear.
Yeah.
Because when you're in fear, you stay in your box. It's only when you feel courageous enough to step out. And much of these interviews I do about and say, I'm not going to be controlled anymore.
Yeah.
I'm going to be me. And even with a lot of the belief systems, whether it's in science, whether it's in religion, whether it's in, what you believe about the origin of life or whatever, the ones that are stepping out are the ones that I think are part of this new shift, which wants the truth of who we are, what we're connected to, all those major things that help give us meaning in our lives. So I suspect it's that final challenge
Hmm.
through fear to
Yeah.
say, if you do that, look what's going to happen. All these terrible things are happening. But I think it is a purging. I think it's challenging us as a soul to speak our truth. I
Yeah.
think that's the biggest challenge of all, is for you to stand up and say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be part of this nonsense anymore. I'm
Yeah.
going to speak my truth no matter what, because it's the only way we're going to free ourselves of those kinds of controls. And I think what's wonderful about those waking up is there is a fearlessness about
Yes.
that. There's
Yes.
like, whatever happens, it's cool, but I'm going to do this. And
That's right.
that's what we need to do. That is absolutely what it's about. It's about being authentic and speaking your truth and saying, whatever happens, this is now the time.
Yeah.
And, this is what I'm seeing, which gives me so much heart, is that people are waking up to realizing that this is the only way we can have a future for this, for our species.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm reminded of that old saying, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, and, it's funny because so many things, at least in my experience, that I learned come in a paradoxical manner, ever since I reawoke or whatever, 8, 9 years ago. But it's like, to watch something that might most likely was put out with an intention to create fear. I'm starting to see people like get fed up, and they're just like backing an animal into a corner and just saying, well, I don't have anything left to lose. I'm going to be me, so it's almost like what they're trying not to shed light on, which is our own personal power and abilities. It's actually bringing it, it's bringing it to fruition anyway. Now, a lot of people talk about disclosure, and I know you speak at conferences, and you've been in this a long time. uh and I often think, it's not to me like secret space program and secret government and da 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 da. But I'm wondering, like now, especially like you bring this up about these professionals, these doctors, and this lady that you were talking about a while ago, who's communicating with the mantids, and I'm wondering, and from your perspective, do you think that part of this disclosure that seems to be occurring is going to be the role and the presence of our multidimensional universal family within our lives, and therefore within our collective lives?
It's a good question. And much of the information that I'm getting right across the board, because I'm being contacted by people from all over the globe, and not only our generations, but the younger generations and the children. And there's a real sense that something very major in terms of a paradigm shift is likely. And some are feeling that sense of urgency, that sense of anticipation. Many have talked about the possibility that we will have the reality in front of us
Mm,
of who we are, and the family, the ancestors, and whatever. And there seems to be some really strong indication that as we reach a certain level of consciousness on this planet, then we are able then to connect to those other parts of our ancestors, which I believe is in our DNA anyway, as it's being activated, which seems to be really interesting, because as the frequencies are rising in people, that DNA of what I call our non-human extraterrestrial DNA, whether you call it from the star visitors, star family, is being activated. And more people are saying, I feel connected to the Pleiades, or I
yeah,
feel connected to Andromeda, or whatever. What I believe is going on is our DNA of that particular star family is being
I agree.
activated by the frequencies, and
Yeah,
we start to connect. And many are saying, I'm a hybrid. And the
yeah,
children will talk about being hybrids, that their family is X, Y, and Z in the galaxy, or the various star systems. Not only that, but interdimensionally as well. Some will
yeah,
say, I'm from another dimension. As a 10-year-old told me, he came through a portal in the sun, was his awareness of how he incarnated into human form. So this awareness that we are activating through these frequencies within ourselves, and the desire
yeah,
to connect, is actually opening up a whole new way of living, understanding, and reality.
yeah. Yeah, and I agree with you. I think, I mean, early on, I think these, past life memories and, some of the future progressive things that occurred, they did seem very, oh, this was where I'm from, and this is who I am, and this is who I was. But as time has gone on, it makes much more sense to me that we're, because we're much more than we thought, even when we thought we were you know, but it's like the code's being opened up inside of us, and by virtue of that, we're having these moments of specific transmissions or revelations. And I think and I've been watching this too, more people letting go of the attachment to the essence that brought them to the party, or to the galactic that they first identified. In other words, there's less limitation today than there was, say, a year ago in the Lightworker communities, with specific things that people might have felt were unique to them. It seems to be more of and it seems like a collective push. It seems like everybody's being affected by it, which would only make sense if you're having professionals meeting now and supporting each other, which is exactly what these communities did, after 2012. Because I never knew what an empath was until 2014, and now you're talking about this person where these ADHD, the Asperger's, and I've known many people like this who are now going to be categorized as an exceptional multi-sensory, high vibrational, uh, uh, with a vast potential human. It's a game changer. It's a huge game changer. Somebody just wrote that they were watching something that said that the person who was giving the presentation said that those autistic children they were forecasting would be speaking very soon. I mean, I'm with you, and maybe it's not just one single. People talked about the event and the sun blinking, winking at us, or whatever the case was. Maybe it's just going to be characterized by many, many, many things changing dramatically. I wanted to ask you too. Now, your work, because I don't remember exactly. I know you did a certain type of work with people session wise,
Mm.
and then you kind of changed it, I think, if I'm not mistaken, which is what you're doing now. And I know that some of that had to do with children. Can you kind of restate what you're doing now with people?
Well, there's numerous ways that I'll work with individuals. With the children, for the most part, it's hearing what the children understand of themselves,
Mm.
because there's no hypnosis involved. This is their conscious recall of maybe a past life or lives in other planets, other dimensions, for example. They may talk about their mission, that why they've come to this planet. As one 10-year-old was explaining to me that he'd come from a planet where he was a blue being. He'd come as a center seed to connect to this planet and deal with the pollution on this planet. And he was explaining his interdimensional vision, which he can see with his eyes open, for example. So I'm looking at abilities and awareness that I believe all of us have, but they are very connected to it. So for them, mostly it's about listening, the parents writing to me and saying, my son is doing scripts or is speaking a star language. The child might be, a little girl, a 5-year-old speaking a star language and doing symbols and explaining to a mother what they mean, for example. So this is the awareness of the children. And that to me is more about how can I support, the parents will say, how do I support them? How do I make sure they don't get shut down? All those kinds of things. So that's the children. And to explain that what we're seeing as a dysfunction with some children may not be a dysfunction, but just that they're wired differently. So they're not, in fact, programmed back into the old
Yeah.
3D paradigm that is inaccurate and limited. So once parents understand this and how to deal with that and how to support them, like Dr. Olson, as a molecular biologist, has developed the understanding of the kinds of vitamins they need, the kind of minerals they need to support that higher frequency. Once you've got an understanding, then the way that you operate with your children will be different.
Mm.
But not only that, it's supporting those that feel they've got no one to talk to, that are judging them because they feel so different. So connecting people, like I talked about, connecting professionals so they're not isolated, and some of them have got really high profile jobs. So it's very dangerous for them to share their true understanding of what they're experiencing. And for some, it's about still um, seeking understanding of maybe memories or missing time, as we
Mm,
call it, or other anomalous things where they've seen beings, to give them a hearing that is, I'm listening to you. And even if they can't talk about it to family or friends or anyone else, they then feel someone is hearing them. So I still do a lot of that, but the hypnosis is to help people understand what has happened. It may be a dream that's never gone away. And often when you've had a dream, they say, I've dreamt of being on spacecraft, don't know whether it's a dream or not. I want to know whether it's real. Well,
mm,
you can take them into that experience so they can see for themselves. And if it's a dream that's still with you 10 years down the track, it's very likely not a dream.
right.
So it's helping them put their um, connecting the dots to their experience. And not everyone's going to be seeing UFOs that are seeing non-human intelligences. It may be through a shamanic experience. It may be through an out-of-body experience or a near-death experience or a spiritual experience where they meditate and start to connect with these beings. So it doesn't have to be, I've gone up on a spaceship. It may be simply that you've changed your frequency and you're starting to tap into this other realm where you may be aware of an angelic realm, or you may be aware of seeing fairies or elementals, energy fields or energy beings or light beings, or orbs of light. And recently in one of my presentations, I mentioned a gentleman who was a former military pilot who had an interaction with a ball of light. And he describes beautifully how this ball of light and him interacted, which activated his pineal gland.
Wow.
And now everything is available to him in terms of the quantum hologram. All information is just available. He says, I can tap into anything now, Mary. And
Wow.
it was interesting because he's a retired pilot. He's in his 40s. And he said this ball of light, literally the solid wall disappeared, and there's this ball of light, and I'm having this communication, this interaction. And since that time, everything has changed for him,
Right.
So these are the profound experiences that are happening globally, right across the globe. These are not isolated incidents.
Yeah.
This is what I'm hearing all the time now.
And then these kids are amazing. And you said, because we've run across a few, um, we've got two situations I know where the child, real three now, the child in the womb communicating with the mother, saying, I have one friend, a couple, he's now almost 3 years old, told them, I'm not going to school. I've got work to do here. You're going to sell everything you got. We're going to get in a truck with a trailer and start traveling around, and you're going to support this. And I even had an interaction with my first grandchild just a few weeks ago, where he told me, and I was changing his diaper, and he was telling me, well, we had a life together on a planet, and I'm sure there's much more than that, but he just said, this is, I need you to give a message to my mother. And so more and more of this stuff is happening. Another thing that's happening is since, and now this certainly since the beginning of the year, a lot of people have been talking about dragon energy. Do you have any reflections on that at all?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? And you're quite right. There's been quite a number of people that feel very connected to the dragon energy. What that's indicating, as far as I can understand at this point at least, is that again, our DNA is being activated, and all those that have contributed to Homo sapiens sapiens, that as the frequency in our DNA reaches certain aspects of that, it's activating that awareness of that
Mm,
particular source of DNA or whatever. That's one way that I've come to understand it. I don't know if that's correct, but it seems to make a lot of sense to
yeah,
me.
yeah. The same as what we were talking about earlier with the star family. Not so much being I'm from here, but we're
Yeah,
mutts. We're like universal mutts. We've got
that's right.
many different seeds. Yeah, I can see that. And the dragon energy seems to be a very big elevation too, because so many people have talked about it. I know, and with Morgan and I, it's brought on some very big expansions. But it's just interesting how this is all playing out. Do you know another thing that's been talked about and been occurring has been kind of like the dimensions bleeding over into our experience, particularly elementals
Mm.
and the nature beings, let's just say plants. And I assume that maybe, I don't know, I don't want to assume anything. They're obviously look a little closer to us, but I don't know how the multiverses work. I mean, the mantid, I could have a mantid here and a reptilian here and a Pleiadian behind me. I mean, but have you, in talking to these children, has there been a kind of a constant or something that are they all talking about the same thing, or is it all over the universal board?
Well, it's fairly broad.
Mhm.
I've learned not to have any limits to anything. What
Mhm.
my sense is that as our frequency gets to a certain level, we perceive more and more of the
Mm.
non-physical realms. And in those realms are everything. They're not separate, where somebody will say,
Okay.
oh, well, I see spirit guides, but I don't see ETs. It may be your own perception and your own limits to and belief system that will be part of what you interpret. For example, for someone very still pretty religious, they may say, well, I see, an angel, or I see Jesus and Mary, where someone else will say, I'm seeing a light being, and I'm
Hmm.
seeing an ascended master, or whatever. It's all about how we choose to interpret our non-physical reality. But lots of children talk about seeing the fairies and the elementals, and I think the thing is too, though, that children also share that they can talk to animals and communicate with animals and plants and even minerals. And I've got a lovely video of a little 6-year-old explaining that he's having a conversation with a meteorite that's telling him where it landed and how it felt about it. And his mother actually said to him, so how do you get the information? He says, well, it talks to me in my mind, was how he
Wow.
explained it.
So they're obviously coming in with a higher frequency, really, when you get right down to it. And we could say, well, they haven't been conditioned, and but they obviously something's going on. Um, Let me ask you, uh, if I came to you or a client came to you and said, I just want to raise my frequency. I just want to, I want to turn the dial up. What would be a way or ways, simple ways or modalities that you would recommend on how to raise your frequency? Is it about clearing space? And then as a result of clearing space, you automatically raise it, or is there something else to the equation?
With my understanding of working multidimensionally, it's all about your intent. If your intent is to do that, what is behind that intent? Is it purely to become more of an enlightened
Mm,
individual, or what is your motivation?
yeah,
So it's really important to look at your motivation. Is it because I want to be other people to look at me and think I'm great?
yeah, yeah,
Because then if you're still working from ego, you'll only get that frequency that's
yeah,
ego. If you really are seeking the higher dimensional understanding and wisdom and awareness, then immediately then you're giving that message out to the quantum universe. This is what I hope to achieve.
yeah,
And things will just start to be very synchronous for you in terms of that. You'll find yourself being drawn maybe to certain books, certain people, or whatever. We're all assisting each other anyway to raise
yeah,
frequency. The
yeah,
more that we are listening to these kinds of conversations, to listening to anything that's uplifting, you're raising your frequency. The more open you are to understanding the multiverse and how it works, you're raising your frequency. So all of these ways, our soul is putting us in the place we need to be. So it's about letting go and trusting. I always say, when people say to me, I want to make sure that I'm, following my mission, my purpose. And my comment to that is, your soul isn't going to let you miss the bus.
Yeah.
If you, it's coming with a purpose, it's going to make sure one way or another you are going to get the message, even if it puts you back against the wall to do it. It will
Mm-hmm.
make sure. So it's about trusting that, and trusting as you are desiring and have that wonderful intent to raise frequency and be more connected. Things will happen synchronously to guide you in that. And it's about being aware of that, seeing those synchronicities
Yeah.
and acknowledging them. The thing is, we are all multidimensional. The main thing is that it's been shut down through judgment, belief systems, all sorts of programming. It's already there. What we've now got to do is listen to it.
Yes.
And it's not just having a communication, which you might have with another intelligence. It may be the sense that you have of things, the
Yeah.
knowing, the feeling. Is all multidimensional information. It isn't just one thing. It's not just channeling, for example, or downloads. It's not just overshadowing or going into deep trance. It is in every day you will get a
Yes.
sense of something, a knowing of something. Listen to it, because that's your multidimensional self saying this is important. That sense of, maybe I've had past lives in a certain place. If you've been drawn to certain countries, for example, and wondered about that, which most probably because you have a connection to them. So what is
Mm-hmm.
that connection? The more you go into that, and delve into what that knowing is telling you, and the more you honor it, the more you get. It's to me, it really is quite simple.
Yeah. I like the word trust. I think that's a big one to me. Faith, the transitive verb to trust and believe, because it's not going to be just handed to you. Otherwise, why would we be here? But I like what you say too, because oftentimes, and that's where I was with my question. Although I've had my share of dimensional experiences and many other things, I was just even like there last night or the night before when we laid down to clasp hands and commune. I was like, I want to go higher. I want to go higher. But as I'm listening to you, I realize, if I just go back to like say August when we came over to the mainland, how the synchronicities are no longer just numbers. It's like, somebody said you can stay here, and then somebody said you can stay here, and before you knew it, we had 2 months of where we were going just based on people sending the request to us or asking us if we wanted to stay, and different invitations. I mean, that is raising your frequency is, like you said, it's these chance meetings that aren't chance meetings. And but I think a big thing too, to your point, is acknowledging what you're seeing, even in the walk to the store today. What was that bird going by? What color was it? That car that came by, that license plate. I mean, the messages are becoming more and more, we're becoming more and more aware of them, because I guess, like you said, they've always been there, just like our multidimensionality has always been there. We just haven't bothered. Well, we haven't believed, because there was nothing supporting us to believe, really. Yeah. These groups like you're putting together in these gatherings and conferences and expos and such retreats, they seem to be picking up pace too. And I think that when people come into contact with each other in the physical, that adds a whole other frequency to the already present frequencies, such as this, where we're using image and voice and so on. That seems to be a real catalyst too for expansion. Yeah. Um, now, let me ask you. I mean, do you have, like, this year in particular? And I know I asked you this last time, but have you? I mean, like, have you felt like, I almost want to say external energies. I don't know how to even put this anymore, because all of our nomenclature is changing. Definitions are changing. But people recently in the last week talking about a lot of headaches in particular. And I saw Sasha Grace, our beloved sister, mention it earlier, that the feminine body is going through a lot of stuff right now, kind of like on behalf of the collective. I mean, do you feel stuff like that? And do you have to deal with stuff like that?
I think we all do. One of the things that I'm grateful for is I live in a very, a country area where a little country town, so it's very quiet, and I need time to myself
Yeah.
to actually recharge, because I find that being amongst a lot of people, particularly, you're picking up
Yeah.
all these different scattered energies, because most of us now are trying to get some stability and some grounding with all that's going on. I mean, it's not just the solar frequencies, it's the frequencies from all these people waking up,
Mm.
those that are downloading all the codes, the symbols, and whatever. They're really, we're being, um, if you like, touched on multiple frequencies. And yes, it will make people feel very tired. A lot of the time, there may be headaches that go with it, because I believe we are literally changing molecularly, and that is part of the reason we get tired. We feel like we've got to be quiet some of the time, particularly drawn to certain foods,
Mm-hmm.
um, or whatever. All of that is that part of us guiding us to that shift that I believe that we're going to be part of. So all I say to people is, the more you tap into your multidimensional self, the more you connect to that. Ask questions. Is there something I particularly need to help my physical container as well as my energy bodies to be in alignment, and whatever? And whatever comes to you spontaneously is probably accurate.
Yeah.
Whether you believe that's your spirit guide, or whether
That's
you
good.
believe that's your super conscious or whatever, it's that instant response that is your
Yeah.
multidimensional self saying, here you go. You've
Yeah.
asked it, you've asked it to the, your to the hologram, and immediately I found you'll get some sense of what you
I,
need to do.
I agree. I mean, there's these memes going around social media 3, 4 years ago. I think I still see them every now and then. If you see me talking to myself,
Yeah.
so I can just, that's great advice. Really, because every one of us ought to be talking to ourselves, but obviously not in the old way. But I mean, if we want something, ask, it will be given. Knock, and the door will be open. I mean, this is stuff that's uh, been written for thousands and thousands of years. Now, the body seems to really be coming into play now, like the body speaking to people. Obviously, the things happening in the body. Are we at the point now, do you think, where enough alignment's been done in the other bodies that now it's the physical body to have to truly have a transformation to include shifting from carbon to light body?
I would sense that's very likely, be given how people are being affected, especially the empaths and those that are particularly sensitive. They're feeling all of that now. So it wouldn't surprise me. And certainly Dr. Olson believes that's what's going on, her understanding of that, and a few others that I've spoken to, that are looking at this from the science side as well. So, and also Dr. Marie Batchelor, who is the MD that I tell her story in The New Human. That's what she is sensing is going on, and that's why she feels that a lot of her work is activating
Mhm.
DNA, as well as moving a lot of the old programs that are limiting us and keeping us in our 3D density, if you like.
Yeah.
So it makes a lot of sense,
Yeah.
on a feeling sensing level.
Yeah.
Although, when I ask, there is a real sense that something major like that is going on.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to be
Yeah.
very careful, don't we? Because, that's my sense, and it may not be somebody else's sense. And I always ask people, go with what you are feeling, go with
Yeah.
what you sense, because that's coming from your high perspective. And that is what is the most important, that you resonate to.
Yeah. Yeah. And that does match what we've received.
Mm.
Morgan and I is quite explicitly, that this is it.
Yeah,
Everything else has been done. Now it's the body,
yeah,
and it's game time,
mm,
because that's
yeah,
the densest part of us.
yeah.
You mentioned Marie Batchelor. She's actually, and she's been on, I think, 3 times. She's coming on again soon. But she's one of the people I was referring to,
Mm.
who, I haven't known her that long, but each time I've talked to her, I mean, because everyone I'm looking at obviously is a mirror of me. We're all going through transformation and changes, but she's so down to earth, She just, I sent her a message just, I think about 3 weeks ago, and to see if she wanted to come on because we finally got into a place where we could broadcast. And she said, I've been going through some stuff, you know, but
Yeah.
I'm back on, and it's just so refreshing to see that what you said earlier, that authenticity, that just being real, like, no matter how much contact you've had or connections or downloads or transmissions, that you can bring it down. Cause I guess that's really what it gets down to. I mean, the body is being prepared for all of this stuff coming in. And this is part of it. This is the big part of it. It's almost like to me, like the last leg of it. Uh,
It,
and then
the way that I look at it, Todd, is it's anchoring the
yeah,
multidimensional self
yeah,
in 3D. And many have come to me with having interactions, having a sense of things, but just needing a few tools
yeah,
to anchor it into their third dimensional reality. So, I usually say to them, well, you're already riding the bike. Let me show you where the brakes are. Let me show
mm,
you, how the gears work. So
mm,
it's just giving them that final little information or tools that enable them to feel confident about working multidimensionally.
yeah,
Um, you know, um, Checking it out. Okay,
yeah,
don't just take it, check it out.
yeah,
Check it out. This is what you do. This is how you do it. And that has been, I think, one of the most important things that I've been working with many people is getting them to anchor that sense of their
mm,
multidimensionals, whether they're becoming more clairvoyant, more
yeah,
clairaudient, more clairsentient. It's just saying, so okay, so how do you want to interpret that information? How do you want to link it to your understanding of those other realms? And your super conscious, or whether you see it as spirit guides,
mm-hmm,
or I call it the non-human team that are assisting you to manage 3D and give you what you need to move on with your purpose, your mission, and your awareness.
yeah, yeah. Morgan has a saying. Well, she says, nothing matters until you embody it.
Yeah,
And I struggled with that early on when I met her because I was connected, but it wasn't it wasn't making the transition. That's
yeah,
why I'd asked the question earlier about how do you raise your frequency. But I guess there's a lot of ways, and I guess one way is to remove what we call shadow, which is really illusion and distraction and distortion. But as time goes on and sitting in this chair, I see there's many different ways, and I guess you just pick what resonates, or what is going to help you. Like you said, spontaneously when you're ready, is going to come in and assist you. So are you? I know you stay pretty busy. Are you getting into anything anytime soon? You going to any conferences? I know you mentioned the book that you have out. I think you had that out last time we talked, or was about to come out. But do you have any plans in the near future?
well, I'm coming to speak at Contact in the Desert in Indian Springs in late May. So that's my last trip to the US this year, because I did the expo in LA in February.
Mm.
And there's a possibility of me going to the Netherlands and Europe at the end of the year. But I have a number of projects. One is getting my both my books are going to be in Japanese.
Oh
One
wow.
very shortly. Also, I'm getting at the moment, one of them is going to be in German, another, both of them are in Spanish. So I'm putting it out in other languages now. Some of them because, I've even got the New Human in Chinese now. So someone's
Mm.
going to see if we can get that published. The interesting thing for me that I'm very grateful for is that, often my books they've offered to do the translation because they've wanted the book to be available in other cultures. And if anything, it's a validation that they're seeing in their own populace. There
Uh,
is a real need for such information. And that is what tells me this is global. Because
yeah.
otherwise, why would a publisher bother to contact Mary and, her weird and wonderful books, unless there's a resonance with some of
Absolutely.
these publishers that are getting in touch and saying, we want to publish this, we want to publish that, which gives me heart. You know, for
Yeah.
me, this is about, okay, so it's making sense to other cultures, to other belief systems and whatever. And that is what's so exciting, is that there is this shift into looking at this from consciousness perspective, rather than, oh, this is just UFOs and
Yeah.
whatever.
True.
Uh,
Yeah.
and I don't know whether you were aware that in the free surveys, what we discovered with the 4,200 individuals and the questions is that only 25% of this is physical. 75% of their interactions with non-human intelligences is out of body. And that is why we need to really know how to work our multidimensional awareness and our consciousness, because that is how we're interacting for the most part with the extraterrestrial, interdimensional, extra-dimensional, transdimensional, and those from our future. That is how we are interacting with them.
Yeah. I was talking to somebody today on an earlier show, and he was talking about practical application, and like going into the experience, and then going back to the experience, and
Yeah.
kind of redoing it, re-engineering it, and just keep doing it again. And it was really interesting to me because I think of these things that happen, and they're not that difficult to recreate.
Mm.
They do seem to happen synchronistically and spontaneously, but if you have a certain experience, you could actually, that the thought that you could actually enhance it by applying it again and again. It's the same thing as learning to shoot a bow and arrow, or learning to play an instrument. You got to practice it. Now then, on the other end of the spectrum, you have these children coming in, and to me it's almost like reverse engineering. Like they're coming in so clean and aligned. I can imagine the impact they're going to have as more people take the opportunity to explore what they have to offer, such as you're doing. That would be some great science and knowledge to come out. Somebody starts to encapsulate these experiences they have with these young children, because it's phenomenal from what I've seen, and I haven't seen a whole lot of it, but I've seen the effect it's had on their parents and people. So yeah, this is great. And then, like what you said too about it's really the focus becoming the consciousness itself. Like you were talking about the global, well, like Marie's in Korea. She's, I think, gone once or twice before. And I know several other people that are going, into other countries they've never been to. Rick Jewers just got to Egypt. He's one of those nomads like us that's just like following the guidance and going different places, not even having a conference or, anything specific, just knowing you got to go there. So yeah, this is ramping up really well. What do you think 2020 is going to be like? Somebody put up a comment a while ago. Allison Coe, the QHHT practitioner, saying that 2020 will be the last recognizable year. Greg Prescott had said, if you won't recognize our realm by the end of the year. It certainly seems significant with the numerology and everything else that's happened. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, if I go on what some have told me about what they've been told, there's something major going to happen in the middle of the year.
Mm.
And for some, the bigger kind of event is more likely to be at the end of the year of this year.
Mm.
So, we're just going to have to wait and see. I think a lot depends, like all these things, on choices being made, whether or not we stay with a particular timeline, or whether through certain choices that this is the interesting thing with reality, isn't it? That we hear that you can move into another timeline depending on what choices are made by society and what have you. So I think there's always that option of, if we go this way, this is what's going to happen. If we go this way, this is what's going to happen. I've always said that I really believe the reason all these children have come in with their awareness is because they are going to be able to teach us
Yeah.
how to operate in this new reality, this future. that
Yeah.
many are sensing is going to be completely different to what we're experiencing now. And that's what gives me hope, because these
Yeah.
children, and what they're going to teach us is how amazing human beings are. And this is what the 9-year-old said to me some years ago, Mary, that human beings are amazing, but they've got to believe it first. I think what's
Yeah.
happening now is we're rediscovering our potential, and this is how the whole reality that we have now will change.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with all of that. And I think that's, I've noticed for myself, and I've never been real conventional, but I've noticed for the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've started to do a lot more self talk, affirmations, which I haven't used in years. Uh, and I'm starting to really, see the importance, or the greater importance, of what comes before me, because
Mm,
there are things I can control. Whether I want to watch a TV program or read the newspaper, or
yeah.
whatever environments I choose, or whatever the multi experiences that we have. But I can see how these little moment by moment choices we make to include uh, our self talk and in the programming that we can certainly, the reprogramming that we certainly can do, are becoming the most important thing. It's not all these big issues on the board, and all the hypothecating and postulating, and and all that stuff. It's actually come down to the very conscious human level, and that actually makes it easier. It just doesn't look as grandiose as everything else. You know, it's not boring. I'll take it. Mary, you're just a wonderful soul, and I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing space with us and honoring us with your presence. And we will look forward to, if you're open to having many, many, many more future collaborations. And I wish you the best in everything.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
You take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.